Hey guys, this is LNG100 again, and in today's blended lecture, we will start a new topic, which is called syntax. And this is the first part of the syntax lecture, and in today's lecture, we will introduce some basic notions. So let's see what will be covered in this blended lecture. So in this lecture, we will define the term syntax as the study of sentence structure, okay? And we will spend some time to discuss why syntax is so important. Now, we have studied a few areas so far. We have studied phonetics, phonology, and morphology, and now we have syntax. But in general, linguists consider the study of syntax as very, very significant, and we'll have some discussion of why this is so. And after this, we will study the notion of grammatical categories as the basic unit in syntax. As you probably know, all branches of linguistics must be defined by basic units. So in phonology, we have basic units such as phonemes, and in morphology, we have units such as morpheme, and the basic units in syntax are called grammatical categories. Okay, so what is syntax? Syntax is about sentence structure. Okay, and in more particular, it's about the study of organization of words into phrases and the organization of phrases into sentences. Now, you have seen the word words before. You know what a word is, but you probably have seen the word phrase before, but we will have some detailed discussion about phrases. And actually, phrases are the one of the most basic units in syntax. And you know what a sentence is. And syntax concerns the abstract study of native speakers' competence in forming a sentence by combining words and phrases together. So in our mental representation, we have the knowledge and the ability to combine words together and to combine phrases together to form a sentence. And this knowledge, this competence is implicit, which means that we just do it, but we don't know how we do it, right? So this is the challenge here. So let's look at our daily conversation, what we do every day. I mean, we speak sentences every day, right? And the question is, what are we saying? Are we just saying words? Well, I mean, if you look at the following sentence, right? Consider the very simple sentence: the student bought a linguistics textbook for reference. Okay. Now, any one of you can say this sentence without thinking too much before you start the sentence. Okay. And the question is, are we just saying these words independently? Well, if you count the sentence contains 8 words, right? But actually, even though you speak these 8 words, you have knowledge of more than these 8 words, right? You somehow know that there are groupings of words. What do you mean by saying that you know the groupings of words? So if you look back to the sentence, the student bought a linguistic textbook for reference, you somehow know that the student will form one group, right? A linguistic textbook will form another group. For reference is the third group. Now, but it's more than just saying that there are 3 groups, right? There are bigger groups than that. So when you look at for reference, it seems that for reference has to do with bought, because it's the purpose of buying. And you can also ask, what does the student buy? Well, the student bought a linguistic textbook. So a linguistic textbook as a group is related to relate to buy, right? And buy is related to for reference. So there are groups, there are smaller groups, and there are bigger groups, right? And as we are speakers of English, we unconsciously know the groupings, and moreover, we know how to arrange the groupings. So when we speak English, we don't screw up the groupings. So these examples, these sentences completely ungrammatical. So no one would say the bought student a textbook for reference linguistics, right? We keep the same words, but we change the order. It doesn't make sense at all, right? Because they are ungrammatical. Or even you keep the grouping, you see that the grouping are arranged in a particular way, so you cannot even say the student for reference a linguistic textbook bought, etc. Right? So for all the ungrammatical sentences, I always put a star in front of this, and there are tons of these, right? We as a speaker of English will never say something like that, right? And instead we say something like that because we have knowledge of the English syntax, right? And different languages have different syntactic structures. That means that different languages have different ways to put words together. Different languages have different ways to put phrases together. So speakers of different languages have different mental representations of sentence structure. Okay? Well, I mean, have you seen the word syntax before? Now you have seen the word grammar before, but the word syntax may not be that popular. Some of you have not seen the word syntax before coming to this class, but actually there are other situations that you may have encountered the word syntax. I just give you two examples. I mean, these are examples that you have seen before. I don't know when was the last time you used a calculator, but somehow you may see this message called syntax error. What do you mean by syntax error? What do you do to the calculator so that this message pops up? Well, I mean, if you have experience playing with a calculator, you understand that, well, every time when you type something which does not make sense to the calculator, then this message syntax error will pop up. Well, what do you mean by saying that you type something which does not make sense? For instance, you don't follow the right order. So for instance, you press the plus before a 7, or when you press the open bracket, but you don't close the bracket and you press enter. So the calculator, well, because the calculator is essentially a computer, the calculator will think that, well, what you type does not make sense at all, so they will give you a message syntax error. Now, in a more recent application, this is a window, there's a pop-up window. I mean, if you write some wrong coding or if you do some wrong procedure and it doesn't work, there's a big cross here. Next to the big cross, they say syntax error, and you must fix this error before tickets can be printed, okay? And what you have to do is to change some coding of the program in order to fix the syntax. So computer is written by a language. That's what people call computing language, and computing languages must have a syntax as well. That's why you see the word syntax in a calculator or in a PC or Mac. Okay? So let's talk about the word syntax. Now, so why syntax is so unique? Why syntax is so important in the study of linguistics? Linguists generally concluded that syntax is creative, and there's another word to mean creative. People call that syntax is generative. Generative means that the syntax can help you produce something new, right? So this is the detail. So any speaker of a language, so for instance, you speak Arabic, so say this is Arabic, any native speakers of a language can understand and produce any new and grammatical sentence of L, which means that as long as you are a native speaker of, say, Arabic, you will understand any new sentences in Arabic. Is that correct? Yes, I think that you agree, right? You don't have any difficulties understanding any new sentences of Arabic. And you have no problem whatsoever producing that means speaking any new and grammatical sentences of Arabic. Well, I could do the same thing in English and Chinese because that's the language that I can speak. Certainly, if I don't know a language, for instance, I don't speak Japanese, I am unable to do this, right? So this is creative, this is generative, this is universal. You know the word universal, that means that as long as you are human, you can do this, right? And the claim that language or grammar or even syntax is creative is not new. I mean, there are lots of people in ancient times who already claim that language is creative, and we can always say something new. Now, however, there's one single person in linguistics that you have to know in this course, okay? And his name is Noam Chomsky, okay? Noam Chomsky is considered as one of the most famous linguists ever lived in history. What he has done is the following. He is definitely not the first person who say that language is creative, but he is the first person who described this notion of creativity by clear rules and conditions. Okay, remember in phonology we discussed something called phonological rules, and in syntax there's also something called syntax rule or syntactic rules, and Noam Chomsky is probably the first person who describes the language creativity by the use of syntax rules and syntax conditions. Okay, and moreover, what is so magical is that this syntax rule and syntax condition is part of the language competence, and this competence will enable us to speak an infinite number, so the word is called infinite, an infinite number of grammatical expressions by us. And because of this, Noam Chomsky called this generative syntax. Okay, so this is Noam Chomsky. By the way, he is still alive. He's an American linguist, widely considered as the most famous linguist ever lived. Okay, and this is his quotation. You can read this. So he stressed the creativity of language, namely the speaker's ability to produce new sentences and sentences that are immediately understood by other speakers, even though they have not heard of those sentences before. Okay, so this is the first part of the syntax lecture. So we'll continue our second part next.